Hello, health champions. Today we're going to talk about the top 10 foods with almost 0 calories, or rather, the foods that are worth eating despite the fact that they have almost no calories. One such food is shirataki noodles, and it's very popular because people love pasta, and here they can get one with 0 calories. And if you read up a little bit on it, you can read things like it causes weight loss, it lowers cholesterol, but it can also be associated with bloating and diarrhea. So when I read things like that, I'm not focusing primarily on the 0 calories. Some people think, oh, that must be a dream food. I want to know, does it really cause weight loss? And if so, how does it do that? Does it do it by restoring some sort of balance in the body, or does it do it by shutting something down and interfering and causing damage? And same thing with lowers cholesterol. What's the mechanism? Bloating and diarrhea. What's the mechanism? What's going on? Does this help the body or does it hurt the body? So we're going to talk about a few things to understand that aspect better, what we're looking for in low-calorie foods, and then we're going to come back and answer the question if this is something you want to eat. 0 calories doesn't mean that you should or shouldn't eat the food per se, but it's the very last reason that you should use to decide if it's good for you. And we have to get over this obsession, this delusion that a food is good because of what's not in it. So we have this marketing frenzy now where we hear that things are gluten-free and sodium-free and cholesterol-free and low-fat and fat-free. And even though it's very important to know if you're gluten sensitive, you need to be able to buy foods that doesn't have gluten. But now we have the opposite. We go to the extreme and we say that if it's missing, if it's free of all these different things, then we pronounce it a superfood simply because of what it doesn't have. And it doesn't work like that. By comparison, we have things like cardboard and sawdust and gravel, and they are also gluten-free and 0 calories, but it doesn't mean that we should start cooking with them. We want to focus more on what food does have. We want to remember that there's a purpose for eating in the first place, that food is supposed to give us certain resources. We can't survive without calories and energy. And then we're also looking for some other nutrients, some micronutrients, vitamins and minerals and enzymes to help us turn this into energy and building blocks. So before we look at the calories, we need to ask ourselves, does this have anything that the body needs? Imagine if animals were as crazy as we were, and you had 2 cows out in the pasture, and one says to the other that, man, you should check out this new kind of grass I found over in the corner here. You can eat twice as much grass and not gain any weight. And the other cow says, that just sounds really dumb because I have a hard enough time getting enough grass in my body, enough resources in my body, and all I do is eat grass, right? Or if you had 2 lions and they're munching away and one says to the other that, dude, I found this new kind of gazelle and it's completely indigestible. It doesn't matter how many of them you eat, you can hunt and eat all day and you never gain any weight. And the other one says, well, I kind of like it the way I have. I just have to hunt once and eat once a day and it gives me everything I need. Why would I want to change that? And that's how nature works. It has checks and bounds. They have mechanisms that we have hunger because the body tells us it wants some resources. We have satiety because the body says we've had enough for a while. So animals are way too smart to mess with the system. But humans, that's another story. We don't eat only to get resources. We also eat for emotional reasons, to change how we feel. And that's not all a bad thing. We have social reasons. We have social gatherings. There's a culture around eating, and that's all fine as long as we eat real food. then we can still maintain this balance of hunger and satiety and getting what the body needs. The problems start when we start compensating, when we're feeling bad and we learn to eat to change how we feel. And then there is a $1 trillion industry of processed foods that feed into this, that learn to push all our buttons with sugar and chemicals and flavor enhancers that change how we feel. And now these so-called foods become drugs and they become addictions. And now we have this industry to keep pushing it, and we don't know how to get out of it. And this is why humans have become so foolish as to start counting calories. And we're the only species on the planet that does. And here's how we want to think about it to understand a little bit about why it got this way. So if humans have been around for a really, really long time, it's something like 10,000 generations. And for thousands and thousands of generations, our DNA has stayed the same. Our genetic material that codes for our enzymes and our ability to break down food has remained pretty much the same, like 99.999% it's the same. And all of these changes with processed foods that we're talking about has happened in the last 5 generations. It's such a short time that on this scale it wouldn't even be visible if I didn't draw that line a little bit thicker. And for all this time, if we were to measure from 100% to 0% processed foods, all this time humans have had 0.00000% processed foods and processed sugar and abundance of sugar. And then in 5 generations, it shot up to like 70%. And all of that's happened in the blink of an eye. And again, humans are the only species that are eating anything more than 0% processed foods. So people often ask me, if I heal my body, if I reverse my diabetes and I get healthy, when can I go back to eating normal food? And that's the whole problem, that we've been conditioned in this short period of 5 generations to think that what we're eating now is normal food, where in actuality, normal food is what they ate for these 10,000 generations. And normal food is what you want to eat most of. Maybe some people can get back to eating 80% what our ancestors ate and 20% modern, but that number is going to vary by the different person, and there's going to be some trial and error. But the more real food, that's the normal food that your DNA is meant to eat, that we've had for thousands of generations, the more of that you eat, the better off you're going to be. So if food don't have a lot of calories, we want to focus still on what they do have. What are the benefits that they provide? And these are things like vitamins and minerals. They have some fiber. They have phytonutrients like flavonoids and phenolics. And these can help with cleansing. They have a cleansing effect on liver and gut. And we want to understand that even if something doesn't have a ton of nutrients for the human cells, they might still have some benefit for the organisms living inside of us. So they can act as prebiotics, meaning food for all of the bacteria inside us. And a lot of people don't realize what that gut biome does, but we have a certain amount of genetic material in our human cells, but the total amount of genetic material in the bacteria in our gut is about 100 to 150 times greater than our human DNA. And that's the DNA that processes all the food that you eat. It's like the first responder. It's the first layer of interaction with everything that you put in your body. And part of it gets digested, part of it gets repackaged, but it's enormously important. So we're not only eating for our human cells, we're also eating for those bacteria. And leafy greens are a great example of what we just talked about. So things like romaine, green leaf lettuce, arugula, and kale, they're leafy greens. And while there's some variation, some might have a little higher in a vitamin or a little bit more in a mineral, they all kind of make up in one aspect for what another one might have. And I want to talk about them a little differently, just introduce an idea. And I'm not saying that this is like a scientific measurement, but it's just a way of thinking about it, that sugar is something that gets into the bloodstream very, very quickly. And leafy greens have basically sugar, water, and fiber. They have very little else. And the sugar gets out very quickly, but if it's packaged in with a lot of water and a good amount of fiber, then that sugar is released so slowly, and it's such a small amount and goes out so slowly that you don't have to worry about it at all. That you can eat as much as you like of these. And here's the reason. When we divide the sugar by the fiber, we get 0.6, 0.6, 0.7, 0.6. So very, very low numbers, and then a good amount of fiber to buffer. And then there's this idea called the zero-sum calorie, that if it costs more to digest it and break it down than the energy we can derive for it, then it's basically a zero-sum calorie, or in some cases even negative, they claim. So this is an interesting concept, and there's definitely some truth to it. It does work like that. However, it's never been proven and it's never been quantified. So we don't really know any numbers or how much, to what degree it works like that. But I prefer still not to pay any attention to it because it's irrelevant. Again, it brings back the focus to what's not in the food. If we focus all on 0 calories, we're placing a value, we're assigning a value to what's not there, and it's the wrong way to think about food. And what about fruits? We hear all the time, eat more fruits and vegetables, fruits and vegetables. And I'm not saying that they're not good, but I'm saying we should not group them together. We should not lump them together as if it was the same thing. And because of that, more isn't always better. So let's look at these numbers. Based on what we just heard, that the idea that if we spend more than we get, then we can have all kinds of different foods with 0 calories. And they've included things like apples and apricots and watermelon in this. But here's how it's very different from other types of vegetables, other types of plants. If we divide the sugar by the fiber, we get 4.3, 4.6, and a whopping 15.5. And a lot of people put watermelon on every list you see as no sugar, no calories, no this or that. But it has a ton of sugar, and it really has nothing else. It has virtually no fiber. It has a lot of water, but it requires no chewing. You can put watermelon in your mouth and swallow straight away, pretty much. And that's why you can eat a lot of it. Even if one little cube doesn't have much sugar or calories, by the time you finish, you've eaten a lot, and there was no fiber to slow it down. What about non-starchy vegetables? How do they compare? Let's look at celery, cabbage, asparagus, cauliflower, and broccoli. If we do the same division, we find celery has a 1.1, cabbage 1.3, asparagus 0.6, pretty much like the leafy greens. Cauliflower 1.2, and broccoli, again, kind of like the leafy greens. It has a little bit more carbs, but it's balanced out by more fiber. And that's how you want to think about it, that these are very different from fruits. So again, you can have almost as much of the leafy greens and non-starchy vegetables as you want, and you're not going to really make your blood sugar fluctuate. But fruits, it's a different story. It doesn't mean you can never eat it, but get away from the idea that more is better. And then berries, very interesting, because that's always lumped together with the fruit. And how do they compare? Raspberries, blackberries, strawberries, and blueberries. Now, if we do that division, we find that raspberries are 0.4, less than a tenth of the other fruits that we looked at. And still, they're usually grouped together. Blackberries 0.7, strawberries 1.6, and blueberries 2.1. So we can see that raspberries and blackberries in this regard, I'm not saying that they're the same thing, but in this regard, they're more like the non-starchy vegetables and the leafy greens. Whereas strawberries and blueberries have less fiber, a little more sugar in the blueberries, so that ratio creeps up a little bit. But remember, you can't live on nothing, so don't try to eat only low-calorie foods. That's not going to work. And I often tell people to not count calories. And with that, I mean, don't count the calories as an absolute number and just try to reduce it, to deprive yourself, because that's going to backfire. If you feel deprived, you can suffer for a few weeks, but then it's going to backfire. The only way you're going to have long-term success is to eat quality foods of the right balance to get satiety. So counting calories is okay, but only in the sense of comparing foods and understanding the nature and the characteristic of a food, so you understand how to compare them and how they relate. But don't count calories to try to just cut back. That's not going to work. What you want to do then is to find the best balance, and that is the best balance for you, not what someone else says. You understand the mechanisms, and then you start playing around with them. And even though they're good low-calorie foods, you don't want to think of it as giving up dense foods. You still want the dense foods with the proteins and the fats, because they provide the building blocks and the long-term satiety that's going to keep you from overeating. And then you add in the foods with a lower calorie density. And in those, you're still looking for something. You're looking for high nutrients, high fiber, and high bulk. And here's how you can play around with that. So let's say that you've been eating this much food and that you had a certain proportion of it that was dense food with fat and protein, and another percentage of low-calorie foods, low-density calorie foods. Now you have two ways to play with this. Either you eat high-quality foods, and because you do that, you can reduce the quantity and still be satisfied. But you're still eating the same proportion, and your body gets what it needs. Another way would be to eat the same volume, quantity, or even a larger volume, but now you cut back on the amount of high density, the fat and protein, and instead you increase the bulk of low density foods that still has the fiber and the good quality nutrients. And now you're all wondering, what about those shirataki noodles? Where do they fit into what we've talked about? Well, they do have 0 calories, but the reason is that they are fiber only. So they don't have much of anything else, but that's not a totally bad thing, because we do need some fiber, and it's not an artificial food. The fiber comes from a root, and the fiber is called glucomannan. It's been used in Asian cooking for centuries. So it's not like a synthetic or man-made product. It's still a natural thing. Just remember that it's a fiber supplement, essentially. It doesn't have any flavor, it doesn't have any nutrients, but you can add things on top of it that have nutrients. And does it cause weight loss? No. It can assist the body with weight loss if you eat it as part of your diet and you eat other good healthy foods with it that help stabilize blood sugar, then it can assist in weight loss. And what about the bloating and the diarrhea? Well, the fiber that you eat goes down and it's digested by your gut bacteria. So the result is going to depend on the quantity and the type and the balance of gut bacteria that you have, and also how much of this stuff you eat at a time. So with any fiber, it's a good idea to add it gradually to let your gut bacteria develop and change around a little bit until they get used to it. So you're going to regulate, you're going to build up more of certain kinds and reduce other kinds depending on the food you eat. And this food is no different. Your gut bacteria always adapt to the type of foods you eat. So just realize it's not a superfood. It's basically a fiber supplement that you can have in conjunction with other food if you eat sensibly overall. And like with all other foods, don't turn it into a food group on its own. Variety is always best. But now, here's the thing. One of the best ways to find that perfect balance for you is to know your baseline. And if you didn't see last week's video, that's where I was talking about how you can do blood work. And if you understand what those markers mean, you can catch imbalances much, much sooner, and you can get a truer picture of where you are. For example, if you're more or less insulin resistant. You can also find out some markers that most people don't test for. Most doctors never test for things like homocysteine or ferritin. And if homocysteine and ferritin are high, then you can actually aggravate insulin resistance. You can promote insulin resistance simply by those two markers being elevated. And because most people have no idea, and unfortunately most doctors have no idea, I'm about to launch a blood work course where I'm going to teach over 8 weeks and help you understand your blood work so that you can truly take charge of your own health, get some blood work and understand what it means so you can get a baseline, make some changes, and then monitor the results and understand it better than you ever have before. So if you check out the links down below, they'll take you to where you can find out and learn more about that course. But also don't forget about the giveaway that we launched on Black Friday, and realize that it runs all the way through December 7th. We'll announce the winners on December 9th, and on the 11th, we'll start the course. There will be 3 lucky winners for a total value of $4,200. And while I don't have the time, unfortunately, to do consultations with people on a regular basis, I've made an exception for this giveaway. So I'm doing 3 private consultations for about an hour or however long it takes to get through with your case. And we're going to discuss your blood work. So part of that giveaway, part of the grand prize, is also including a full panel of blood work that we're going to talk about. And here's what you need to realize about the 3 winners. The first one will be chosen at random, but the second one you can earn. So the person who refers the most people will be the lucky winner number 2. And number 3 you have some influence over, because winner number 3 will be the person who referred the random one. And if you refer enough people, then that means you really up your chances for that prize. If you follow the link below, that will take you to the giveaway where you can enter, and that will also tell you exactly how that referral contest works. If you enjoyed this video, you're going to love that one. And if you truly want to master health by understanding how the body really works, make sure you subscribe, hit that bell, and turn on all the notifications so you never miss a life-saving video.